With a question, why would the Medrash describe the temple as being tzarua, as having leprosy?
Right.
If you want to say that eventually there was avodah zarah in it, there was idolatry, so say it. That the destroyed temple had leprosy. But why would he say lechatchila, that from its very inception? In other words, says the Rebbe, it can't only be something negative. So when you say that somebody has leprosy itself, the tzarat itself, is not just something negative. Gimel.
We just have a slight technical hitch here of finding out where Gimel is. Okay, ויש לבאר?
ויש לבאר זה, על פי מה שכתב אדמו"ר זקן שם. We can explain this based on what the Alter Rebbe wrote in the mimer that we read, in the essay that we read. עוד עניין בנוגע לנגעים. Another point that has to do with these blemishes. וזה לשונו. And so he says.
Where did that write this? In the mimer we learned or in the
Yeah, the mimer that we learned. נגעים דברים גבוהים הן.
Right, I remember.
That the blemishes are from a high place.
Highly spiritual thing.
שאינו נקרא טמא עד שיקראנו הכהן טמא. Because the person does not become impure.
Why does that
until
make it high?
Oh,
That should
we
make
didn't
it
finish.
Very low.
We didn't finish. We'll finish the sentence.
Mm.
So the person's not legally impure
Until
the Kohen actually says he's impure.
Right.
So what happened? So what about before? Why would saying something make such a difference? Change the reality. שעדיין לא קרא לו שם טמא, אין הנגעים בכלל טומאה, אלא אדרבה הם אורות עליונים, רק שהם דין הקשיא דקדושה. So says the Rebbe, you should know, the Alter Rebbe, he says that as long as the Kohen is not spoken, then the blemishes, the tzarat, is not only not impure, it's actually from a high place. It's called supernal lights, except that they are what we call harsh judgments, din akashya.
Din akashya is not something good. Din akashya is something bad.
No, it's from a very high place. It doesn't mean it's not good. It just means that it's from a high place. The fact that it's harsh judgment just says that it's harsh, but it's very high. It's very good. והובא אל אהרון הכהן, שניטלים על ידי הכהן שהוא חסד הילה. And the whole purpose of bringing the person who has the blemish, the leprosy, to the Kohen is in order to sweeten, or what he calls here, elevate the lights using the Kohen's attribute of being a man of chesed, a man of loving kindness. ויוכל להמתיק דינים כשאומר טהור. And the real purpose was that because these lights are very high, the things that cause the leprosy, the tzarat, they come from a very high place. They came down, but they came down in the form of harsh judgments. That's why it looks like a sickness, like an ailment. So the Kohen who's there was really meant to do what? To say tahor. Why do you need him in the first place? Because he has the power to sweeten harsh judgments. So if these lights, in order to descend, they had to have a lot of judgment. They had a lot of force in them. So the Kohen is the one who can take the forcefulness out of it and just retain it as a highly spiritual type of revelation.
But he does. He says tameh.
Yeah, because it could be that he's tameh, but if he's tahor, he also needs to say tahor. So you brought the Kohen originally not to say tameh. I didn't bring him so that he would say that it's impure. I really brought him to see it and to sweeten the harsh judgments. Except sometimes the harsh judgments were so strong that the person really is impure. ויש לומר שעניין זה בא לידי ביטוי גם בנגעים כפשוטם. And we need to say that this also appears in regular blemishes.
You skip a couple.
I did. Oh, sorry. זאת אומרת שעצם החפצה דנגע, קודם קריאת שם טמא על ידי הכהן, אינו עניין של טומאה, אלא אדרבה עניין של קדושה. Meaning that as long as the Kohen is not given it the name impure, it's actually something very holy. So the blemish is actually something very holy. V'yesh lomar. And so this not only, says the Rebbe, appears in relation to the special din that you have to bring the Kohen to say whether it's tahor or tameh. Not only in that respect, meaning that as long as he hasn't said, it's a very high level. It also comes together, it also is expressed, this idea, in the nega itself. How? במראות הנגעים שלמלכתחילה הם טהורים, אך שגם הם צריכים להביא אל הכהן שהוא יאמר טהור. נגעים אלה הם מלכתחילה עניין של קדושה, ופעולת הכהן בהם, אמירת טהור, אינה כדי לטהרה מן הטומאה, אלא להמתיק הגבוהות בחסדים, להופכה מדין הקשיא לעניין של חסד. So the important thing is that when you bring the Kohen, you're not bringing him in order to take this blemish and take it out of its impurity and bring it into purity. Rather, it's not defined before, or if it's defined in any way, it's defined as being from a high place, from a holy place. And the whole purpose of the Kohen is to sweeten the judgments inside this blemish. That's all, just to sweeten the judgments. And then it automatically is something positive.
But he sweetens the judgments by saying tahor.
Mm-hmm. Right. He has to say something.
And here he says, aval eno kedei l'tahara.
Right. Because the sweetening is tahara. And to be not impure is something else. Right? It's a big chiddush. There's two types of tahor. There's tahara, that you come and you say, okay, this thing was impure, I'm going to turn it now into something pure. And there's also tahara in the sense of sweetening the judgments. And it's not to turn it, not because it was impure before. אלא שמדינים קשים אלו דקדושה יכול להשתנשל אחר כך עניין של רע. But you should know where does the negative come from? It comes from these harsh judgments in this light that came down in the form of the tzaras, of the blemish. And if it's not sweetened, then it can descend even further and become something mamish negative, and then it can be tameh mamish. וכידוע שמריבוי הצמצומים של מידת הדין והגבורה נשתלשל עניין הרע והם אורות הנגעים הטמאים. And we know that from the many descents of the and lessening of the light that came out of din, eventually that's where evil came from.
But this guy's going to go back to the Kohen when the Kohen says it's tameh.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually the Kohen's going to say it's tahor. So now what's that?
Something new.
No, but that's a sweetening of the gavur or not?
No, something new. He's not sweetening the same thing. There has to be a change. For the person to come back a second time, there has to be a change.
So what happened to the gavur in the meantime? There's been a physical change, but what's the spiritual change?
Either more light came down, and dafka this is exactly the light that can be changed, or physically he overcame this, and he sweetened some of it as himself maybe, or something else, but it's no longer changing. It's no longer physically showing itself to be different. Al pi zeh. So according to this, you can say that this is nitpicking, but it's important to know this, that really, again, it's like Nadav and Avihu last week. Then in Chassidus, they're seen as heroes. They're good people. They're not bad people. They didn't do anything wrong. Hashem's makpid with them. Hashem is more strict with them because of what they did. But overall, they're tzaddikim. They weren't killed because they did some terrible avera. In the same way, the leper, who seems to be the worst person in the world, in Chassidus, he's not the worst person at all. He's the best person, actually. And the whole story is turned upside down in Chassidus. What you thought was something negative is actually something positive. על פי זה יש להוסיף עוד יותר. דלא זו בלבד ששורש עניין הנגע הוא בקדושה, דינא קשיא דקדושה, אלא עוד זאת שבשורשו הוא דרגה נעלית ביותר בקדושה גופה. Not only is a blemish like this, like tzarat, holy, and again we said dina kasha, it's the harsh judgments in the holiness, but even more than that, it's a very high level. ועל דרך המבואר בעניין מידת הגבורה שלמעלה, שורשה המקורה אינו עניין של דין וצמצום, אלא אדרבה גבורה מלשון תגבורת. תגבורת החיות, השפעה והתגברות יתרה, שלמעלה מכלי קיבול של המקבל, שלכן נמשך ומשתשם מזה אחר כך עניין הצמצום והגבורה, מניעת השפע כפשוטה, ובפרט שהמקבל אין ביכולתו להכיל שפע רב כזה. So all this is explained in Torah, or what does he say? You should know that the root of gvura, the root of judgment above, is not about a contraction. It's not, it doesn't become evil because down below, it doesn't become something negative because I didn't give it enough light, as it were. That's not the reason in this case. It has enough light. In fact, it's the opposite. It became, it stepped out of the range of kedusha, out of the range of holiness, because it was so much light that it's as if whatever came down suddenly becomes like a waterfall on together with a pump. It's way beyond the normal way that things come down. It's beitgabrut. There's some kind of might associated with it that causes it to come down even more strongly. And the example is gvurot gshemim. The example is when rain comes down, right? So when rain is really coming down, says the Gemara, what's the sign? That for every drop, there are 2 drops that fly back up, right? So that's what you see in a rainstorm. You see rain falling, and then inside the puddles, once the drop hits the puddle, 2 drops jump up to greet it.
Must have never seen that.
You've never seen that?
No.
You look at any Walt Disney movie, especially Bambi, where there's a rain scene. So they didn't know how to do this back in the 30s, but they did it pretty well. They found a way to do slow motion photography, and they looked at what happens when a drop hits water, because they wanted to paint it, because it's an animated film. They wanted to paint it exactly. And what did they find? They found, and you can see this later if you want on YouTube or wherever, what happens when you slow motion photograph a drop falling into a puddle. What you see is that the drop hits, and then there's a splash, and the splash is like a beautiful flower coming up around it, and it's pretty big, this flower, and it's round, it's all round, and then once the flower is up higher, suddenly you see in the middle of it like a smaller drop jumping up. So you get the flower as the outside, and the drop on the inside is the second. There's the first and second drops that come up towards every drop that falls from the sky. It's an amazing thing. You've never seen it. You mamish have to see it. It's like one of those reasons to live in the 20th century.
Iconic moments.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons to live in the 20th century. I don't know how Chazal saw it, because what they did in Bambi was that they...
I bet you Chazal did not see Bambi.
Yeah, so... which begs the question. So what the way they did it in Bambi was that they slowed it down so that you would see it. Because in 30 frames, if you would do it at the real speed, you wouldn't be able to catch the flower. And you certainly wouldn't be able to see that drop. It's literally a drop. You see the drop falling into the water, the flower blooming around it, and then a drop comes out.
Where does that go?
What? It falls back down. It falls back in. It's amazing. You've never seen this. Aye.
You can send it to me by YouTube.
Yeah, just look it up. Slow motion drop.
I get very bad results when I write to YouTube. I get better results when I write to the river. I get answers. YouTube doesn't give me too much. Google doesn't tell me what I want to know.
Okay. So that's called tigboret. That you get more coming back up than you did coming down.
Boyd in English is reinforcements.
Yeah, like additional. אלא אדרבה, גבורה מלשון תגבורת, תגבורת החיות על דרך גבורת גשמים. So what is really being increased? What's doubling? The chayus, the amount of life force. השפעה והתגברות יתרה של למעלה מכלי קיבול של המקבל, שלכן נמשך ומשתלשל מזה אחר כך עניין הצמצום והגבורה, מניעת השפע כפשוטה, ובפרט כשהמקבל אין ביכולתו להכיל שפע רב כזה. So because there's so much coming down, that it displaces twice the amount that you thought it would. So the result is that there's no vessel below to contain this great life force that's coming down. So there's a breakdown below. So that's what he describes in chapter 27 in the Tanya, that the feeling that the world not the world, but the feeling that I'm experiencing some evil in my life is not because evil really descended from above. Rather, what descended from above was goodness, but too much of it. And when you don't have a vessel, it's just as bad as if it was evil. When you don't have a vessel and everything is spilling outside, so the feeling is one of like encountering evil.
Like Choni Amaka.
Right. It becomes too much, and now you're drowning me. וכן בענייננו, לעניין הנגע בשורשו הראשון הוא תקבור את הקדושה. He says, these blemishes, this tsaras that you thought was something negative, should know that initially it's all holiness. Now it fits that this is something that would happen to a penultimately refined person. He has one more thing to rectify, that's all. But other than that, he's completely rectified. He's completely refined. So tsaras is really happening to the best person. Why? Because it's really another measure of holiness that he's receiving. Except that he didn't have a vessel to contain it. So because he didn't have the vessel, so then it begins to hurt him. And it turns into something negative. וכן בענייננו דינן הנגע בשורשו הראשון הוא תגבור את הקדושה, אלא שמזה משתלשלים דינים קשים כפי שהם עדיין בעולם הקדושה, ומדינים קשים אלו נשתלשלו אחר כך למטה יותר מראות הנגעים הטמאים. So first you have a lot of kedusha coming down. The lot of kedusha is mixed with harsh judgments, which apparently sustain it. And finally, the harsh judgments, they turn into negativity. They become into the blemishes that are impure. So it's a three-part process that happens. ויש לומר שעניין זה נרמז בלשון אדמו"ר הזקן, שנגיעים כשעדיין לא קרא לו שם טמא, הם אורות עליונים, ולא כתב אורות דקדושה. The Rebbe says that the Alter Rebbe, when he described these lights that came down, so he says the blemishes, before they've been called impure by the Kohen, they're lofty lights. What do you mean by lofty? And he then say holy lights. שבזה מרמז ששורש עניין נגיעים הוא לא רק דינים קשים דקדושה, אלא למעלה יותר אורות עליונים. He's trying to say that know that it's not just the problem here of the harsh judgments, but these lights, in their origin, they're very high, they're very lofty. And so he just calls them orot elonim, and he doesn't say orot dekdusha. היינו, לא רק עניין של אור וגילוי אלוקות, אלא עוד זאת אורות אילונים שלמעלה מתחתון ממדידה vehagbala. So know that these are not just lofty lights. They come to reveal godliness. That's why they're called lofty. What do we mean by they come to reveal godliness? Godliness is what's beyond description. So these lights, they have the capacity to describe what cannot be described.
But the point that's confusing is that you say you can never take a pasuk out of its literal meaning.
Yeah.
And you're talking about people who lichi'ura have done something which is not beseder.
What do you mean?
It's from Lashon Hara.
No, so we already said yesterday. I was thinking about Miriam's. Miriam's the only real example that we have of somebody that you think she spoke Lashon Hara. I remember.
Yeah.
I don't remember if we said this yesterday.
2 days ago. Yesterday.
No, but I don't remember if we analyzed it.
Yeah, we did.
What did we say?
We said that she had a good intention, but it was misinterpreted as saying something bad.
So I thought about it some more, and I came to the conclusion that the part that she was mostly punished for wasn't what she said about Moshe, but what she said about herself. How's that for a chiddush? What?
I also get.
What are you talking about?
She said, I also have that.
I also have no. What are you talking? Who cares? רק אך במשה דיבר, לא גם בנו דיבר אלוקים. Why are you suddenly talking about yourself? A person...
So she wanted to say that she hadn't separated from her husband.
בסדר.
She wasn't saying it.
So say...
She said, I'm such a clever person.
You see?
She said that I also have a and I haven't separated.
So that's why I'm a clever person. Because I haven't separated. So say, I haven't separated, he's separated. Why do you have to say you're a prophet? Why do you have to talk about yourself? No, you should just say, a prophet should not separate from his wife. That's all she should have said.
Then you say, how do you know? Who are you to come and say what a prophet?
But she wasn't giving it to Beis Din yet. It wasn't like she was testifying to it. She was talking to Aaron. The comparison she did is also not so great for Moshe Rabbeinu. What are you comparing Moshe for? But more importantly, why are you talking about yourself? At this level, a person at this level should not be talking about themselves. They should not be interested in it. They should be doing their shlichus in the world. And that's it. Why would you suddenly be talking about yourself?
Because we're all human.
Said it. Okay, so now he says, to get rid of that, she needs to receive supernal lights, lofty lights, a higher revelation of godliness that can help her get rid of whatever little blemish is left. So the light that comes down is not even a blemish. It's actually the remedy. And it's coming to fix some other problem that the person already has.
So this guy who went to see one of the Nevi'im, as usual, my name slips me, Elisha,
Yeah.
was a guy.
Naaman. Yeah.
Yeah. So where's his lofty lights coming from? Why has he got lofty lights?
Because he's going to become a ger.
I missed that bit. Where did you get that from?
He was Megayer.
By traveling in the Yarden.
I don't remember what. It's Megayer. The whole thing was. But it wasn't just that he was Megayer. He caused the army of Aram to fear God. Because here's their leader.
It doesn't say that anywhere.
Imagine that Soleimani, instead of being killed by America.
But it doesn't say nowhere.
Yeah, it does. It says that he's the chief army officer of Aram. And he comes to the prophet.
Because he wants to get cured.
He doesn't have his own gods. Go get cured there.
We didn't say come to be a guy. And so if he's still a goy, why has he got all these orot?
Turn him into a Jew. It's a high revelation. It's a lofty revelation. That's the bottom line explanation. It's meant to cause a rectification. It's not meant to be a punishment. Say it another way, that I think we saw this, in the Rebbe, either it was here or I talked about it for some reason, that he says that The Rebbe says that. No, what did I want to say? I lost it.
Where's the time is that?
What? I'm much more tired. I think.
When did you get up?
No, I got up normal. What did I want to say?
I don't know. I lost track of you.
Yeah, we were talking about Naaman,
Yeah.
and we said that Hashem wanted to give him higher light so that he would be Megayer.
No one was Gigi.
Was it Gingy?
Good guy. Gigi. A good guy. What did you remember?
No, whatever he was God-fearing.
Right.
And because he was God-fearing, he came to Elisha. And he comes to God's prophet. And then the reason... right, that's what I want to say. That the Rebbe said, I think we either saw this or I said it yesterday, that somewhere the Rebbe says that don't understand that Motzi Shem Ra, that Lashon Hara is the problem. That's an asmachta. Because Metzora sounds like Motzi Shem Ra. It's a phonetic asmachta. The asmachta just means...
Who said that?
The Rebbe says this. The asmachta means that it's just a way for Chazal, for the sages... Well, he doesn't say this part. This part
to
of
hook onto it.
To hook on. But what do they mean to say? This he does say. They mean to say that it's a blemish in Ahavas Yisrael. Don't take the part of Lashon Hara to what was I say? B'tzimtzum. Like that it's just about that. No. Even saying something negative about yourself is a problem. You don't have to say it about anybody else. Even Miriam talking about herself, that's Motzi Shem Ra.
It's kind of passing into this book that you don't have to be Lashon Hara by yourself.
Yeah, but he's not speaking Lashon. He's saying something good about herself.
Right.
But a person of that stature, to speak about themselves, even just to speak about themselves, is something negative.
Because it's almost as if you're not allowed to speak good about somebody because it leads to Lashon Hara.
Okay. And I guess you're also not allowed to speak good about yourself. It'll lead to Lashon Hara also.
It leads to Gaiva.
Okay. Which is the reason for all the Lashon Hara.
But
okay, in any case,
the Rebbe said today in the Yom Yom that this person is supposed to look back on what he's done and think, Baruch Hashem, I did some good things, now I'm going to move forward.
Yeah.
So there is talking about yourself.
And then why did...
You see, you're not supposed to speak about yourself. One is supposed to speak to oneself and say, what did I achieve this year? Baruch Hashem, I achieved
That's
ABC.
not speaking about yourself. I'm talking about speaking about yourself to other people.
It's talking about it to yourself.
No, to yourself,
The only person who listens to what I've got to say is me.
You have to speak to yourself in order to do a cheshbon nefesh. It's not that you have self-consciousness. I don't think anything can take that away.
Okay.
We mean like actually opening your mouth and talking to somebody about yourself. Let's just finish this. What is this? If I abstract it a little bit more, what do I get to? That the blemish of tzarat is like having a ratzo b'li shov. That I only run and I don't return. I don't have a vessel. I only have the light. I don't have the vessel.
That's why it comes so close to the story of Aaron's sons. That was just
Right, same thing.
No,
only ratzo, no shov.
Close to it. No, it's close, physically close to it in the tower.
And in the Torah, they're near one another. Hainu avodah de klot hanefesh. What did they do? Our own sons. They were the first two people to reach klot hanefesh. When you say, again, you can picture it like two flashes of fire came up their nostrils. But that's exactly what happened to people when they davened. You can see this flash of fire and something that you can't see, and people never recovered from davening. Why? Because it was so powerful for them. That's Ratzo Bli Shov. Or like Ben Azai, who doesn't come out of the Pardes.
Yeah, but he didn't go in properly.
And it says that the reason that Rabbi Akiva was able to go into the Pardes and come out was because he prepared the Shov before he started the Ratzo. He knew where he was going to come back to before he even starts. It's sort of like going into a cave. If you don't have a piece of string or something to mark where you're going,
you can't follow your
you
way
can't
out.
find your way out.
It's a very interesting parable.
So that's the loftiness.
Nichnas b'sholem, yotze b'sholem.
Right.
Nichnas b'sholem means that he went in such a way.
You
he
know that you're
always
coming out
find
already.
his way back.
Right.
That's very good.
By the way, this is a
I
parable.
like that.
Okay. The parable was really developed by the Gra.
Oh,
The
yeah.
Gra in his Perush on
Where did
Mishlei
you find time to learn all of the Gra?
a long time ago, when I used to have time.
Okay.
So I remember some things from it. One of the things I remember is that in his introduction, he explains what Chochmah, Bina, and Das are.
What?
And he gives a beautiful analogy about Chochmah and Bina. He says Chochmah is like going into the depth of a cave, into the depth. But with Chochmah, you can't come out. You need Bina, which is like leaving a trail behind you, or he says a piece of string that'll show you how to take back all the pieces of Chochmah that you learned. You went into the cave, it's like every time you added more Chochmah, more wisdom. To make it into a whole so this doesn't just come in through here and go out through there and you didn't get anything from it. You have to have a structure in place. And he says the structure, which takes you out in piece, not piece by piece, is what allows you then to integrate everything that you learned. So he says that's the reason. By the way, that's the Ratzon Shov. It's called Sinai V'Okerarim, right? And two types of Talmidei Chachamim: the one who knows everything and the one who is a big innovator. So which one is better? So really, an innovator is good, but only if you have a Sinai. If you have somebody who knows,
boulders, but where are they going to fall down?
okay, it's just going to make a mess.
Somebody's head.
So you have to prepare the wall and then put it into the wall so that it actually builds something. So he says that's Bina. Bina builds the structure of my knowledge. And you do that by learning every day a lot. You have to learn every day. He says you have to learn a lot every day. The Gra probably finished Shas every week or every month. I don't know what. So he learned a lot every single day. And then when you have a Chiddush, it falls into the right place. It doesn't just dissipate. It doesn't just disappear, and it doesn't drive you nuts also. Driving you nuts literally means taking you out of your space, that you don't know where you're living. So he says that's what Tzaraat. Tzaraat is like going beyond. It's like that moment in which you get more inspiration. But it's inspiration without any vessel. It's light without a vessel. And so for that you need the Kohen. The Kohen is the one who's going to help you put it into a structure. And that's what he does by saying Taho. That's what it means to sweeten the judgments. In this case. שעל ידי הנגע והעבודה הרוחנית הוא רצות בלי שוב, היינו העבודה דקלות הנפש, היא התשוקה לצאת ממדידות והגבלות. So, yearning with all your heart is like wanting to leave all the limits that you know, all the definitions that you know, which is also very nice. But if you only shoot yourself out of the cannon and you don't make sure there's somewhere to land, it's not going to end very nicely. Because you have to know before you start that you have a place to land. And we talked about Kunin about this. Remember? I told you that I heard this from Kunin himself. Actually from his son. From Chaim Nachum.
Yeah, you told me, but I don't remember what it was.
That after the Rebbe explained about the Chatchila River, so Kunin took it very much to heart, and he started jumping up and down in California, doing, jumping jacks or whatever he did. And within a few months, he was bankrupt beyond any kind of hope of ever digging himself out of it, because he did everything, and he took loans, and he did it, and he said the Chatchila River. What? So he came back, his hands up in the air. I give up to the Rebbe. He came back to New York and said, I don't know what to do. So the Rebbe said, why did you do what you did? So he says, because that's what I understood that you wanted from the Chatchila River. So the Rebbe says to him, before you jump, you have to make sure there's somewhere to land. So because you didn't know, everything will turn out okay, but don't do it next time. You didn't know you were supposed to... You can jump over a cliff. You have to make sure there's water down there. You can do all kinds of crazy Mesiras Nefesh. There has to be a way out. You have to think of how you're going to get out of it before you start. That means preparing the shov before the ratzon, preparing the return before the run, so that you have somewhere to land.
But how did he get out of it?
I don't know. The Rebbe gave him $100, and the $100 were worth $1 million. I don't know what he did.
This was the lady that left him $26 million.
You know, he says that was one of the things that got him out of it. But I think he said it was a little bit later. It wasn't directly related to that. Maybe it was, but I don't remember. The lady with the cat. You heard about this?
I know there was a lady in hospital. He went to visit her, and she left him all the money.
She was going to leave everything to the cat.
Right.
Like $26 million and $30 million. Yeah, it grows all the time. So it was probably $2 million, whatever it was.
But she got half in the end. They split it.
Yeah, the cat still got half.
No, the family took the other half.
The family they said, if you convince her,
Yeah.
we'll give you half. So he convinced her not to leave it to the cat. Only in America. This would never happen in England, for instance, because they leave it for the dog.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. היינו עבודה לקלוט הנפש שידבק בלוקות בביטול גמור, ואין זה כפי הכוונה העליונה, שצריך להיות עבודת השוב דווקא, להמשיך הלוקות בעולם על ידי עבודת תורה מצוות בנשמה וגוף דווקא. So he says, the reason it's a blemish, the reason it looks like an ailment, the reason everything's wrong here is because there's no vessel. But not because these are not very high and lofty, energetic lights. A toe. It's a type of toe. It's a type of great energy that came down that's from a high place. And it has no vessel down here.
So now what do you get? Shvias HaKelim? Or you fix it?
No, you fix, that's what the Kohen does. The Kohen is very interesting. The Kohen is really a man of vessels. He puts everything in vessels. That's what he does in the Mikdash. What does he do all day? Cleans vessels. He puts vessels. He's constantly fixing. The base Mikdash is like the vessel of Hashem in some symbolic way. It's like Hashem is somehow contained here. And the Kohen takes care of it all day long. So he's building vessels. That's really what he's doing. הרי ששורש עניין הנגע בעבודת האדם היא עבודה נעלית ביותר רצו וכלות הנפש, היא אהבה בכל מאודיך למעלה מהמדידה והגבלה, אלא שזה כאשר אין אחר גם עניין השוב, הרי זה לא כפי הכוונה. So really, the reason he came to this in the first place, this great person who's very refined, is because somewhere in what he did, he was doing Ratzo without Shov. He was doing a run without a return. He was bringing down lights without vessels for them. What's an example? So you can do it in both ways. Story from Rabusha. I think I've told you before. That somebody once came to him and wanted to give him a huge sum of money to finish building the woman's the recuperation. It's like a country club, whatever. I don't know how to say it. It's like it's a hospice for women who have given birth.
I can't remember what it's called for a second, but it'll come to me. Beit Achlama.
Yeah, Beit Achlama. How you say it in English?
Recuperation home.
Yeah, so he built
nursing home. They call it a nursing home.
Okay, so he was building one in Telstone.
Okay.
And he was somewhere in the beginning. And somebody came to him and said, I want to give you the entire sum for finishing this. Because the whole thing was supposed to also function with free of charge or close to free of charge. Whatever, the whole thing was from donations. So Reb Usher said, how do you want to give me the money? He said, I'm going to give you a check for the whole sum. It was like a million lirot back then. I don't know what it was. Some ridiculous thing. So Usher thought a little and said, no, I don't want it. And the guy said, are you sure? I'm willing. So, as usually happened in these cases, the person went home angry at Reb Usher for not wanting his tzedakah, not wanting his charity. So then the students asked him, Reb Usher, why didn't you take the money? Now, I mean, it would have saved you so much time, because now you still have to build it, and every time you don't have money, so every time you do something and you have to pay the contractors, you have to run around and find, here's somebody who was willing to give you the whole thing.
Too easy.
So this is amazing what Ratzo without Shov is. And Moshe said, if he gave me the check, what would I do with the check?
Bank it.
I put it in the bank. And then every time I need to pay one of the contractors, what would I do?
Write a check.
No. I'd go to the bank
And take the money.
and ask them for the money. So I don't want to go to the bank to ask them for the money. I want to come to Hashem and ask him for the money. So I prefer to continue asking Hashem for the money, and I don't want to go to the bank to ask him for the money. I'm not going to be dependent on the bank.
But you're not dependent on the bank because it's your money. It's in the bank. You just got to go there and take it.
He has, for him, that means being dependent. He has to go there, and he has to get it. That's being dependent. I don't want to be dependent on
You
him.
don't have to do that. You write the cabinet and check.
He doesn't have a check. He has to go once to buy the checks. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Reb Usha was like this. Either I get it from Hashem or I don't want it. No, but what about your time? What about the amount of time we're going to have to spend now? So first of all, Reb Usha probably would say, that's what I do with my life. I ask Hashem for things that I need. That's what I do. That's my occupation. That's what I'm paid for. But I think that it's deeper. Now that I think about it, if he would have taken it, that would have been Ratzo without Shov. Meaning he has the light and he has nowhere to put it. So he has to go put it in a bank. Yeah. The money is like
the seller says you're going to build the building first and then put the kalim inside.
Sendo. But so he's building the building now. But he doesn't need 1,000,000 lirot. He only needs 100,000 right now. So the other 900,000 are lights without vessels. And he says lights without vessels, they're going to cause you problems.
So why didn't you do something so much easier? Why didn't you just say to the guy, okay, I want your donation, but I don't want to handle the money. So I'll give you the telephone number to Kabbalah. And every time the Kabbalah says he wants some money, give him something. And when you get the $1 million, stop.
Maybe that's what he eventually did. But it's a very interesting thing. I don't want to hold on.
No, holding on to money is very dangerous.
What do you do with it?
No, I get money for the catering, right?
So what do you do with it?
I give it away as fast as I can.
Okay.
The worst caring in the world is the one that's got a tremendous amount of money, cash or in the bank. I do everything I can to get rid of the money. Osher Lemon Cohen told me that if you be very careful what you say. If you go around collecting money, for example, I don't say it anymore, this is for Chabad Ramon Gimel for Tishrei.
Yeah.
That means that on 29th of Elul, every single penny that you collected has to have gone to the people who live. Well, I don't do that because I always like to keep some money in the bank for spare. So he said, did it ever happen to you that you got to Tishrei and you didn't have enough money to give to everybody? I said, no. So he says, so then start to trust in Hashem a little bit and give it all away. And you'll see that every single Pesach, every single Tishrei, there will always be enough money. So I said, okay, and he was right. Absolutely right. Never fail. B'yad hara, k'nei hara. Shekosh Baruch Hu should continue to bless us all. It doesn't matter what happens. Some miracle happens. Guy knocks on the door. I just won the what do you call it? U.S. state lottery, and I think 100,000. Yeah. Crazy things that don't make any sense at all.
So that's lights without vessels. You have to be very careful not to hold on to them, because that's what causes this blemish. So it says it's very high light, especially when you think about it as like charity. If somebody gave you charity to give, why are you not giving it out? Doesn't make sense.
Couldn't sleep if you had no money.
Says the Baal Shem Tov also, whenever Shabbos would come around, he'd give everything he had. So he was already not just with tzedakah, he was with his own money that way. But it's a very dangerous position to be in. You're responsible for. על פי כל הנ"ל יובן גם הטעם שמשיח נקרא בשם מצורע. So now we understand why the Mashiach is called the leper. Why? כי עניין הגאולה הוא היציאה מכל מיצרים וגבולים. תגבורת הקדושה. What is redemption? What is the Mashiach going to do? He's going to take everybody out of their limitations. How is he going to do it? With these high lights, lofty lights. Why is he suffering? Because there's no vessel to put it into. That's what it means, cholyenu. You can understand cholyenu in two ways. He doesn't say it here, but it's pretty simple. Cholyenu can also be our sand. Not just, like, ena bo mitmale mi chuliyato. Chuliyato is the sand that you took out. You can't refill the entire hole that you took the sand out of. Because just this law, I don't know, that it doesn't fill completely from what you took out. So cholyenu nasa, to say he carries, it's not our sickness, he carries our sand. And he wants to put it into us. But there's no vessel. And so he's stuck with these lofty lights. And there's nowhere to put them. And so it turns into a blemish in him. Because there's no... And that's called the might of holiness. It's so much holiness that it simply blemishes him. And that's the type of revelation of godliness that has no limits. That's beyond borders. And it happens because he's carrying our sand, or he's carrying our sickness. What's our sickness? That we don't have a vessel. שבזה נעשה ברוב הזיכוך היותר נכון של בני ישראל בעקבותיו המשיח. ובמילא נעשים כלים להתגלות של אורות עליונים. And so the Mashiach, what he tries to do is to create vessels. And the moment that he shows you these lights, then you come and you say, there must be vessels. So what does it turn out? That Mashiach is somebody who has these chidushei Torah. He has this tremendous Torah that will change the world. And you come and you look at it, and you say, where's this going? And where's all this new Torah going to go? And he says, I'm just waiting for somebody to build a vessel for it to go through. The whole internet, everything that we have now is just because these lights have already been revealed. And the whole purpose of all this communications and everything that's going on is just to distribute this. We don't need this level of communications to live. It's all a vessel that's waiting to be used to... No, very little. Very little. So what did Lipsker told me on Shabbos. Lipsker told me on Shabbos that Kinus HaShluchim 2 years ago, 3 years ago, Shilat got up on the stage and said, Moshe Shilat, I have a plan how to reach every single Jew in 3 years. So everybody booed him down. Why? What do you mean? Mashiach now. Can't wait 3 years. Okay. You don't want to hear. You don't want to hear. And he went down. He didn't say anything. So I said to Moshe, I think that to Israel Lipsker, I think that's a mistake. Because when you say Mashiach now, what are you saying? You're saying, don't tell me I need anything else. Whatever you have is enough to start. Don't tell me, it's like that story with the professor that came to the Rebbe and said to him, look, if you really want your shluchim, your emissaries, to succeed, why don't you send them first to learn psychology, send them to learn business management, send them to learn accounting, and send them to learn how to speak, and family counseling. I don't know. Then they'll be ready for the job. So the Rebbe said, by the time they finish all that, they'll be ready for the grave. They have no time. What are you talking about? You can't. And the point was, they don't need anything else. They need to go start talking to people now. We can't wait. There's a Jew here who's literally 2 minutes away from the grave. And you're going to tell me this my shaliach now is going to go study for 10 years, and then he's going to go, I'm looking for him. He's going to say Kaddish on his grave. That's what's going to happen. So I said that I think when you say Mashiach now, what you mean is that the actions that I take now should be actions that can count. They shouldn't be preparatory actions. They shouldn't be something that prepares and thinks about it, and we'll do it this way, and eventually we'll come from here. No, the whole idea is, the Rebbe says, you have everything you need already. There's nothing more that's needed. The only thing that's needed...
Once in the heart goes to the heart, you don't need all this other stuff.
And then זוכים לקיום הייעוד ולא ייכנף עוד מורך, פירוש שלא יתכסה ממך בכנף ולבוש, והיו עיניך רואות את מורך בגאולה אמיתית והשלמה על ידי משיח צדקנו ותכף מיד ממש. So then you get to see that everything is revealed. לא ייכנף עוד מורך. Then you get to see the supernal lights from Hashem, but you have to make those vessels. The moment you make the vessels, and that's what the Kohen is doing, he's in a sense making a vessel for the Mashiach's lights, and then they can be contained in something. And that's what the Rebbe meant, I think. It's one of the reasons, I talk about it somewhere else, it's not relevant now, that to open the eyes is like Vera'a Kohen. You have to gaze at something with a positive outlook, that this can be something that can change the world. You have to look at it in a certain way. You have to see it a certain way. That's called opening the eyes. And that's what the Kohen did. He takes this light that this person who has a blemish, the same thing as, by the way, he didn't go back to the Beis HaMikdash, but it's the same idea. So the Beis HaMikdash is said to be tzarua, it has leprosy as it were, because that's where God reveals himself. So there's these supernal lights coming down, and they have no vessel yet. And so they're waiting for the vessel to be created. So that's that. And tomorrow I want to show you the Arizal on this, so that we get a full picture.
Okay, tomorrow will be Wednesday. It's a weird day tomorrow.
Wednesday means weird day.
No, it's a weird Wednesday. Wednesday is always complex.